According to Hobbes, life in a state of nature is terrible. Our worst fears are realized in it. Our worst fear is dying prematurely. And what do we find in the state of nature? We die prematurely. Life in the state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. We would like to get out of the state of nature, right? And so, if we're afforded a kind of moment of reflection, right? If I can get away from other people for however long and I can just kind of start thinking to myself, well, the first thing I'm going to probably start thinking about is how this is awful. And I want to do anything I can to get out of this, to leave the state of nature. And I might start thinking about, well, how would I do that? What would that look like? How could we avoid this? The kinds of thoughts that would occur to us were we in this state of nature and were we afforded a moment of reflection. Uh, the kinds of thoughts that would occur to us, um, Hobbes gives voice to in his laws of nature. What we would discover fairly rapidly, Hobbes thinks, are what he calls the laws of nature. And the laws of nature give us something of a path to follow to eliminate this state of war. So let's turn now to the laws of nature. In so turning, what we're considering is how Hobbes thinks we might start getting out of this state of nature, this state of war. Laws of nature. Okay, first thing to say about them. Well, give you Hobbes' general take on what a law of nature is. A law of nature is a general rule discoverable by reason, and you might think so far that seems obvious enough, by which a man is forbidden to do that which is destructive of his life. Now, as we'll talk about what exactly that means in a second, but what should already be clear is that he's not using law of nature in the way that we might use that phrase. When we talk about laws of nature, we typically, I think, are talking about scientific laws, the law of gravity and the law of the conservation of momentum and whatever, stuff like that. Those are the only laws I know. Those are the laws of nature, right? They dictate how material things and forces and mass and whatever hit and don't hit and whatever else they do, how they move. That's not how Hobbes is using this phrase law of nature, right? We would use that as a synonym for scientific law. That's not how Hobbes is using it. He is picking up on a different, he's picking up on a tradition of thought that stems back into the Middle Ages, stems back even into ancient times, this kind of natural law theory of ethics. We're not going to worry about it. It's not something we're concerned with in this course. But his usage here has precedent. He's picking up on that. And so if you know anything about the natural law, about people like Aquinas or whatever in the natural law, it's not the same thing as what Aquinas was up to, but he's in that mode of thought. He's using this phrase law of nature in that way. Okay, so it's a general rule discoverable by reason. So it's going to be some sort of general prescription, do this, don't do that, right? General rule, okay, easy enough. Discoverable by reason. And what Hobbes is going to mean by that is not that you need to go get a PhD and whatever, and that you need to be super smart. No. He's going to mean something much more. If you just think about it for just a second, if you're afforded those 5 minutes of reflection in the state of nature, no one's around with a spear trying to stick it inside you or whatever, right? If you can just you could figure this out. You could figure out these general rules. And they are ordered towards, right? So this is the last part, discoverable by reason, by which a man is forbidden to do that which is destructive of his life. They are ordered toward self-preservation, right? That's what they're for. That's what they would help ensure. So they're general rules, right? They're general kind of prescriptions for how we should or should not behave that we can just figure out by thinking, which would help ensure self-preservation. That's what a law of nature is, according to Hobbes. And in the Leviathan, there are multiple. There's like roughly a dozen of these laws of nature. We're not going to look at nearly all of them. We're going to look at the first three. And those are kind of singled out by most commentators as being among the most important. So that's what we're going to focus on. And in particular, the third is perhaps the most important one. The next lecture will be on the third law of nature exclusively. In this one, we're going to focus on the first two laws of nature. All right, well, so what are they? So here's his kind of general account, right? All the laws of nature, there's about a dozen of them. They are all general rules discoverable by reason, by which man is forbidden to do that which is destructive of his life. Okay, well, what specifically now are they? Well, the first one, think of it like this. You're sitting around in this state of nature, right? And you see everyone attacking everybody else, and you've got to attack people, and it's just this war of all against all. And you think, man, this is really bad. I'm going to die soon. Because, yeah, I've been able to fend people off so far, but, you know, my luck's going to run out, and that's not going to, my life is going to be short, right? And so how could we stop this? Well, if we just didn't have war, right? If we just sought peace and we all, followed peace, then I wouldn't have to worry so much about my own death. Then my life would likely be longer, right? And so, hey, here it is. A general rule discoverable by reason. I don't know, seek peace. And don't do the things that would lead to war and whatever. Seek peace. And that's going to help ensure a longer life for everybody. That's the first law of nature. Seek peace and follow it. Right? That would be perfect. That would be great. But what Hobbes notes is that where there isn't any kind of enforcement mechanism in place, the laws of nature run so contrary to our passions, as he calls it, that no one's going to follow them. So that's a problem. Well, what exactly does that mean? Let's take this first law of nature. Hobbes thinks that nobody in a state of nature is actually going to follow that. Yeah, sure, fine. You can think if you're given 5 minutes or whatever and figure that out. Man, it'd be great if we just all sought peace and followed it. But nobody's going to actually do that in a state of nature. So let's consider an illustration. So there you are again with your apple. Yeah, and you're in a state of nature, and you whatever, you're worried about your own untimely death. You don't want that to happen. You don't want to starve. So there you are with your apple, and you're all anxious about dying. Okay, fine. And then I stroll up again. Why do I keep strolling up to you like this? I don't know. But there I am. But there's a difference. I've kind of thought to myself, and you have too, let's say, right? There was just 5 minutes prior to our meeting where we had a chance to think, man, this is terrible. We should seek peace and follow it. And so I show up and I start talking to you. I say, hey, look, hold on. I'm not going to hurt you. That's not what I'm about. I've thought for 5 minutes and I realized that, look, we should seek peace and follow it. And that will help both of us avoid an untimely death, right? That'll help allay this kind of primal basic fear of death that we have, right? Okay, these primary motivations that we have. Okay, great. Well, what's going to happen? Are you just going to say, okay, yeah, great, sure? No. You're going to probably think to yourself, right, out of this kind of fear that you have in this war of all against all, you know what? I don't really trust that guy. He's probably just trying to get my apple. Because if anything, that's something I might try to do. I might try to go up to somebody and trick them into putting their guard down so that I can take their food. Because I need food in order to survive. He's probably just trying to trick me. He's probably just trying to take my apple because resources are so scarce. He's starving. He needs food, but I need food. He's just trying to take my food, and that will end up in me dying. He might even try to kill me, right? Once he takes my apple, once he tricks me, once my guard's down. And so what's going to happen? Oh, you already knew what was going to happen. That's what's going to happen, right? And so even though we can figure out that we should seek peace and follow it, that doesn't mean anybody's going to, because the conditions that give rise to war are still all in place. Resources are still scarce. We are still just scrounging by to avoid starvation. And so everyone else is still a potential threat to our self-preservation because resources are scarce. They're going to try to steal our resources. I know that resources are scarce. I know that you're looking out for your own self-preservation. And so I know that you might try to kill me in order to take my resources so that you don't die. All of that's still in play. And so even though we can figure out that we ought to seek peace and follow it, that doesn't mean anybody's actually going to. Okay. Well, let's say we're afforded another, instead of just 5 minutes, we're afforded 10 minutes, right? To just think and kind of reflect about things. And so in that first 5 minutes, you might think, okay, yeah, seek peace and follow it. But then you might keep thinking, but no, that's not going to work, because if I come across somebody else, even if I say, hey, look, I'm not going to steal your apple, I just want peace or whatever, he's not going to believe me. He's not going to trust me, because I wouldn't trust somebody if they came up to me and said that, right? We need to do something else. Part of the problem might be this right in nature thing that we have. When I came up to the guy, and when I came up to you, right? When Jeff comes up to you or whatever, right? Jeff's got a right to that apple. He has a right to anything that's deemed needful for self-preservation. And so maybe that's the problem, right? So Jeff has this right to the apple that you're currently holding. And so when he comes up to you and says, hey, I seek peace, you're thinking to yourself, nah, I don't think so. I think you want this apple and you have a right to it. And so I'm going to attack you so that you don't take it. Well, maybe the next step then would be not just to say I seek peace, but like to lay down your right to the apple, right? And so it's not enough just to say I seek peace. You also have to come and say, like, and look, I seek peace and I lay down my right to that apple that you have, to your resources. I'm not going to take them. I don't claim them as my own. I lay down my rights. I divest myself of my rights to your stuff. Right? That might be a way forward. Yeah, something like that. That's the second law of nature. Right? This would be a general rule that you can figure out just by thinking about it, which would help ensure our self-preservation. One ought to lay down one's right to everything, that is to say, one's right of nature, when one finds others who are willing to do the same. I lay down my right to the apple. I lay down, so this is something, the right of nature, the right to everything. It includes not just a right to resources, but Hobbes is clear. It also includes a right to other people's bodies. And what he has in mind when he describes the right of nature in that way is I have a right to, this isn't quite how he put it, but I have a right to rearrange your body parts if I see so fit, right? If that would be advantageous for my self-preservation, I can, jam a spear into your body, rearranging it in that way to incapacitate you, right? I have the right to do that, according to Hobbes, in a state of nature. That's what the right of nature includes. It's a right to everything. That would be needful for self-preservation, right? If I rearrange your body parts so that you no longer posed a threat to me, that's good for my self-preservation. And so in a state of nature, you have a right to do that. Well, now what the second law of nature is saying is that, well, look, you should lay down your right to do that. I'll lay down my right to rearrange your body parts. I lay down my right to your apple. If, right, I find someone who's willing to do the same. Perfect. Well, maybe that would solve things. Maybe if this second law of nature, right? This next step we're taking in figuring out how it is that we could avoid this state of war, maybe that will work. Well, not quite. Similar kind of problem. Hobbes thinks unless there's some authority or power who can enforce the law of nature, people aren't going to follow it. So let's take you again. There you are again with your apple. And you already know how this is all going to go. And then, of course, for whatever silly reason, I just never learned, I stroll on up. But this time now, I stroll on up because I got something new to say, right? I'm not just going to, I've thought 10 minutes. And so I've thought not only the first law of nature, not only I'm going to seek peace, but this second law of nature. I'm going to look, I lay down my right to everything, including your delicious apple, including my right to rearrange your body parts. Please trust me. I lay down my rights. Well, what are you going to think? You're probably going to think, well, look, that would be real nice. I'd like to lay down my rights too, because you've had 10 minutes to think about this too, right? And you've discovered the second law of nature. And so you're thinking to yourself, that'd be real nice. I'd really like to do that. Lay down my right to everything. I'd happily lay down my right to rearrange Jeff, rearrange the order of whatever his internal organs with my spear. I'd lay down my right to do that. But I don't know. I don't trust that guy. I think he's just playing me. He just wants my apple. Resources are still scarce. Our primal motivation is still self-preservation. And so I bet Jeff's lying to me. Again, I bet he's saying all that just to get my apple. And I bet as soon as I let my guard down, he's going to rearrange my body parts, incapacitate me, so that I'm no longer a threat to him and his self-preservation, and so that he can take my apple and so preserve himself, right? I bet that's what he's doing. And so how is this? And you might be right. And the reason you might think this is because, well, I would do that probably, right? If I were in a state of nature and I were, you are in a state of nature in this example, right? But if I were to come up to somebody who had an apple, I might try to trick them because I'm really concerned about not dying and I'm starving over here. And so if I see them with an apple, I'm going to say anything I can to try to get that apple from them. And if that includes saying something like, hey, look, I seek peace and I lay down my right of nature and whatever, well, then maybe I'll say that just so they put their guard down and I can go take their apple. Yeah. And so how is this going to end? Yeah, just like that. There it is. Again. Right? So even though we can figure out these first two laws of nature, that's not going to put an end to the state of war. It's going to continue. Even though we can figure these things out, without some authority in place to enforce these laws, as Hobbes says, they run contrary to our natural passions, and so we're not going to follow them.